The truth is that boredom is the root of all the evil that corrodes your soul, and you know it, even though you spend most of your time trying to escape this realization through cheap distractions. You're like the clown in a theater who rushes on stage to warn that the backstage is on fire. You scream and beg for attention to your real pain, but the audience, the outside world, this anonymous mass you value so deeply, only applauds and laughs, believing your anguish to be a well-performed joke. This is how your world will end, amid applause from people who have forgotten what it means to be human. Why are you so afraid of silence? Why do you surround yourself with noise, with other people's opinions, with breaking news that will be dead tomorrow? I will tell you why. You are afraid of what silence will reveal when you are alone with your own self. You are afraid of discovering that behind all these social masks, there is nothing but deep despair and a complete absence of purpose. You feel like a castaway in 70,000 fathoms of water, yet instead of swimming toward eternity, you cling to soap bubbles. You feel like a shadow, an absence of yourself, because you never had the courage to make a choice that truly mattered. Your suffering is not a system error. It is the only sign that something in you is still trying to breathe. Yet you treat this pain as a disease to be cured with pills and entertainment, when in truth, it is the only thing that could free you from your condition as society's domesticated animal. You live in the aesthetic stage, the stage of immediate satisfaction and fleeting desires, where every pleasure is like a stone skipping across the surface of the water. It leaps lightly for a moment, but once it stops, it inevitably sinks into dark depths. This is how you dance over the abyss, exhilarated by your brief rest, pretending you do not feel the dizziness of your own freedom. Have you ever felt like the unhappiest man in the world? The one who waits for something that already lies in the past and remembers something that could only exist in the future? You are always absent from yourself, never present in the now. You wait for a happiness that never arrives because you search for it outside yourself, in objects, in people, in social positions, without realizing that the only truth that matters is the one you possess inwardly. You have become a mime of your own life, repeating gestures learned from others, living as if on a stage, yet never having read the script of your own heart. Why do you still insist on hiding in the crowd? You believe that the majority is right, that where there are many, there is truth. What a comforting lie. The crowd is untruth because it erases individual responsibility. In the crowd, no one is responsible, no one is guilty, and therefore no one is truly an I. You have become a specimen of the human race, a copy of a copy, a number in a statistic, and you call this civilization. Do you feel that weight? The weight of being nobody, even when everyone seems to know your name on social surfaces. You suffer from the sickness unto death, the despair of not wanting to be who you are, or the even more arrogant despair of wanting to create yourself independently of the power that established you. You feel fragmented, a pile of moments without continuity, because you lack the courage to assume the ethical commitment of being a defined and solid person. You float in the ocean of possibilities, but never reach the solid ground of decision. And now, as you listen to me, you feel that sting, don't you? It is the thorn in your flesh reminding you that you were made for something greater than this mediocrity in which you have sunk, but you prefer to keep suffering boredom rather than face the anguish of being free. You prefer to be a slave to your own indecision than the master of your own soul before the eternal. I was not born with these truths ready-made. I extracted them from the blood and melancholy of my own history. I was born old, as if the sins and sorrows of generations had been placed in my cradle before my first cry. My father, Michael, was a man of crushing austerity, a patriarch whose gaze seemed to carry the weight of a divine curse. He told me that when he was a poor, starving boy on the Jutland Heath, he cursed God. He believed that this curse would pursue him and all his children, and I grew up under this shadow of inherited death and guilt. I saw 5 of my 7 siblings die before reaching the age of Christ. I lived with the certainty that my life would be short and that joy was a gift that did not belong to me. Yet it was in this domestic confinement that I learned the power of inwardness. My father, though severe, possessed an omnipotent imagination. When I was a child and asked to go outside, he often refused, but instead offered to walk with me hand in hand. pacing up and down the floor of our living room. As we walked, he described every street of Copenhagen, every passerby, every sound of the city with such vivid detail that after half an hour I was exhausted, as if I had walked all day beneath the sun. There, in that closed room, I understood that external reality is secondary to the power of thought, that the entire world can be experienced within four walls if the spirit is awake. I learned to give style to my life through imagination, yet I soon realized that imagination without decision is merely a more sophisticated prison. I tried to live the aesthetic life, the life of intellectual brilliance and social pleasures. I wandered the streets of Copenhagen as a flaneur, a cynical observer, frequenting theaters and cafes, becoming the life of the party with my caustic wit. I mastered the rotation method. When an experience became dull, I simply changed the ground, or rather, changed how I looked at things, cultivating arbitrariness to avoid suffocating boredom. I became a meticulous observer, capable of finding entertainment in a spider or in the dripping sound of a roof, anything to avoid confronting the truth of my own emptiness. I laughed at everything because I saw life as a meaningless absurdity. But deep down, I was in despair. I was the most unhappy man because my soul was scattered among 1,000 possibilities, none of which was truly myself. Then I met Regina Olsen. She was the queen of my heart, the embodiment of the immediate and beautiful life I longed to possess. We became engaged, and for a moment I believed I could be normal, that I could integrate into the universal through marriage, as Judge William preached in my writings. But the thorn in my flesh would not allow it. I carried a secret, a hereditary melancholy, an interior life so complex and dark that I dared not reveal it to a wife. I realized that to become what I was destined to be, a religious author, a solitary watchman, I would have to sacrifice what I loved most. I broke off the engagement in the cruelest possible way, pretending to be a scoundrel, a cheap seducer, so that she could free herself from me in hatred and find happiness with another. This sacrifice tore me in two, but it thrust me into the religious stage where the individual stands alone before God, beyond the world's ethical judgment. I lived through the Corsair affair, during which I was publicly ridiculed by Copenhagen's press. People laughed at my uneven trousers, my hunchback, my manner of walking. I, who could have been the darling of the elite, chose to become the target of mass mockery. Why? Because I needed to feel the impact of the crowd to confirm that truth is never with numbers. I saw honorable men turn into cruel animals once hidden within the anonymity of public opinion. I understood that the world wants to be deceived, and that to tell it the truth one must be a spy, a secret agent of eternity operating within time. I concluded that official Christianity, with its complacent bishops and social rituals, was a betrayal of Christ. That being Christian is not social comfort, but a catastrophic collision with the world. My truth was forged in absolute solitude. I learned that truth is subjectivity, not in the sense that you can invent reality, but in the sense that nothing is true for you until you appropriate it with the passion of your life, until you are willing to live and die for it. I saw that most people merely think they believe, but do not act their belief. They are collectors of information, not seekers of meaning. I understood that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom because it shows us that we alone are responsible for what we make of ourselves. God does not give us logical proofs of His existence. He gives us paradox, the absurd, and demands a leap that reason cannot explain. I arrived at this truth by losing everything the world considers valuable, and I assure you, despair was my most faithful teacher. Now look at your modern world, this vast web of connections that serves only to hide the fact that you have never been so alone or so lost. You live submerged in what I called the public, this faceless monster that dictates what you should wear, think, and feel. Today, your social networks are the apotheosis of the crowd's untruth. You seek validation through likes and views, becoming a perfect copy to please a jury of strangers. Are you anxious? Of course you are. But your anxiety is not merely a chemical imbalance, It is your spirit screaming under the weight of choice paralysis. You have so many options, careers, partners, identities, that you end up being nothing, an eternal spectator of a life that never truly begins. You are immersed in the cult of busyness. You run back and forth, filling every minute with notifications, work, and noise, simply to avoid facing the emptiness that resonates when silence finally arrives. You think you are being productive, but to me you are merely a man rescuing fire tongs while his entire house burns. What are you saving of eternal value amid all this movement? Nothing. You are an employee of your own destruction, selling your soul for a comfort that leaves you ever more restless. You suffer from the despair of finitude, losing yourself in trivial tasks while forgetting that something eternal within you demands attention. Modern despair manifests as perfectionism and burnout. You desperately try to be yourself through your own titanic will, building an ideal self upon shifting sand. You pursue endless self-improvement, refusing to accept your fundamental limitations and your dependence on something greater. Or worse, you suffer from the despair of weakness, wanting to be anyone except yourself, fleeing the responsibility of being an individual to become merely a specimen in the social herd. You live in bad faith, pretending you have no choice, when in fact you choose not to choose every second of your mediocre life. And your loneliness? You fear it like a plague when it is the only waiting room for truth. You cannot endure 5 minutes without looking at a screen, without seeking the comfort of the crowd's chatter. But I ask you, how do you expect to know God or yourself if you are always surrounded by others' opinions? You have become a stranger to your own inwardness, a castaway who has forgotten how to swim because he is too busy describing the water to other castaways. Your modern world has abolished the individual's majestic distance and replaced it with an obscene, soulless closeness. Do not expect artificial happy endings or easy answers from me. Life is not a problem to be solved with a logical formula. It is a reality to be experienced with fear and trembling. The way out of your emptiness is not more information, but deeper commitment. You must make the qualitative leap, accepting the absurdity of existence and anchoring yourself in the power that established it. Without this, you will remain the most unhappy, mourning missed chances and dreaming of a future that never arrives because you are not present to build it. Time is passing. The hand of eternity has barely moved while you wasted decades on distractions. You live only once, and that once is now. Are you ready to become an individual, ready to stand alone before the eternal and take responsibility for your life? Or will you remain a pale reflection of what others expect from you? The choice is yours, and despair is your only honest guide. Wake up. Stop being a spectator of your own ruin. The door of truth only opens from within, and you are the only one who holds the key, though you seem to prefer letting it rust while begging the crowd to open it from the outside. Be honest with yourself, at least once, before the silence of death silences you forever. What will you carry into eternity when the noise of this world ceases? A handful of views and hollow applause, or the soul of a man who had the courage to be himself before God? The answer lies in your decision, or in your cowardice to make one. Remember, in the end, you will be your own accounting, and your subjective truth will be the only thing left to judge you.